Is there any multimedia or anything from either side that, yeah?
Yeah.
So we're going to start with the pro side. You want to set up?
The first two slides are like me and Mike, and then somebody else.
Yeah.
New slides. I don't know. It's not in the first slide. Somebody can look at these slides.
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, for the most part.
And I don't know what the slide says. Please tell me.
I'll just tell you.
Yeah.
Okay. We will start in 10 seconds. Go.
All right, so the point that I wanted to start out with was that the perfumer may be an artist in the same way as many other accepted artists. So using, for example, Jean-Claude Elena, the artist behind The Garden on the Nile, it's evident that perfumers dedicate their skills and creativity to their works just as any other painter or musician, just instead using the medium of smell rather than sight or sound. So as Kant put it, fine art is the product of genius. At Hermes, A Garden on the Nile began as merely the theme of river. Elena scoured the Nile River personally to examine its scents, combined the perfume's chemical components in precise proportions, and even fine-tuned particular aspects of the scent, such as how long it lasted on the skin. And it was his mastery of this artistic process that led him to be a founding member of the world's largest scent archive based in Versailles. And it was his genius that produced the fragrances that tripled Hermes' perfume sales under his reign. And so it wouldn't feel right to call what Elena has mastered a science, nor is it mere craft, right? Rather, Elena is an artist whose symphonies are composed of not 12 notes, but practically infinite ingredients and their scents, whose images evoke experiences of a country, an emotion, or even the particular person who's wearing the perfume, even after they left the room.
So to be clear, we are not claiming that all perfume is hired, but rather that perfume can be hired. As Mike mentioned, a crucial aspect of that is that the perfumer thinks of himself as an artist, and our first pictures is kind of comparing a perfumer and all of his ingredients to a painter with all of their paints, and how they look very similar, and they're both very creative processes. Another aspect is the formulaic creation of perfume. In the same way that a great novel is a work of art, but destroying one copy of that novel does not destroy the artwork itself, so is true for perfume. To an extent, it is mass-produced like a novel, but one bottle being broken or running out does not get rid of the work of art. It still exists, and it lies with the original formula and with the perfumer. Can we go to the next slide? So some of the perfumes that we interacted with in class, like GP and Un Jardin sur le Nil, are perfumes that would be considered high art, but not all perfumes contain this level of mastery. Take, for example, celebrity perfumes, like the ones created by Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber. These are kitsch, and they're not high art. They serve the same purpose as any other form of fan merchandise, and their purpose is to sell and spread a brand name. They were not concerned with the expression of ideas or with artistic mastery, but simply creating a product that would appeal to the masses. So we want to limit our argument of perfume as a high art to only those great perfumes that combine certain elements, such as the artist or the perfumer considering himself an artist, and a certain level of expertise.
An additional key strength of perfume as a fine art is that it's an art that is its own end. I want you all just really quickly to imagine the last time you purchased a perfume or a cologne or even tried one on, and ignoring your own personal or your own opinions, and for the sake of the debate, I'm willing to bet that the vast majority of you did not smell a vanilla-esque concoction and think, yeah, I want to wear this because it perfectly emulates the odor that signals my ovulation. We don't actually think of perfume as being based on any sort of biological basis. This is the argument that's brought to us by Sanchez in the defense of true perfume, as we have just defined from Sabrina and Mike as a fine art. What matters is the art of abstraction in perfumery. It's the creation of a new smell for its own qualities and not for any relationship to a biological basis. A perfume is an art because it's a purpose in and of itself, and that it serves solely to be pleasant, or perhaps not, to be complex, to be layered. It's something that exists as an abstract channel for our cognition, for our imagination, to be a consideration, to be a part of our replay. And this is what we defined in the beginning of the year as an integral necessary criteria of art with Kant, and that it's a purposiveness without purpose.
Great. So we would like to argue that perfume can express a wide range of feelings and emotions and ideas. As a result, the experience created by perfume is distinct from just a experience, it's an experience. As Sanchez puts it, there's a distinct beginning and an end, and it engages in our senses in a way that our art does as well. Sanchez says perfumes have ideas, there are surprising textures, moods, tensions, harmonies, and juxtapositions. Perfumes can also exemplify certain personalities. They can be also abstract and representative, and there is definitely an objectivity when it comes to perfumes as some are the other, and there's a standard of taste.
Additionally, both the level of expertise necessary for perfume creation and the manner in which perfume is discussed are also indicators that perfume indeed can be high art. The ability for artworks to be conferred upon contributes to their status as artworks, and these kinds of opening, challenging, and critical discussions, which are facilitated by both experts and non-experts every day, demonstrate a unique and interactive dynamic between the perfume creators, industry experts, and audiences, showing that these discussions are distinct from those that occur outside of the space of art. If perfumes were mainly valued by society for their function, these discussions would be limited to product reviews. Instead, there exists a rich and intense dialogue that is unequivocally philosophical in nature. As noted by Tanya Sanchez, creating perfumes takes creativity paired with daring and a level of skill necessary to recognize a good idea and realize the idea to its fullest potential. These factors that go into the creation of perfume are the very same factors that are present in the creators of painting, film, dance, or music. The presence of these factors, combined with the existence of standards of excellence and the discussions that take place, legitimize perfume as an art further.
And actually returning to the idea of the intrinsic properties of a perfume, a perfume is able to open up new worlds. It says Van Gogh's a painting of peasant shoes opens up a world of significance to Heidegger. Only the pictorial representation of the shoes do we see the peasant woman trudging into the field, toiling all day in the soil and enduring the harsh outdoor conditions. In the sense, a perfume is no different. In smelling under the Nile, especially picked mango. In other sense, was discussed at the banks of the Nile, and that's one a flucus, a fly, a flower's bloom. So only this expression of the riverside garden do we pause and notice all of these things. So a perfume was up this world in the same way as other forms of fire do, from music to painting to even food. So even in terms of stuff that as in religious and a liar, he doesn't offer us an exact replication of the green mango. It's this a fantasy version that agrees and experience in the estellage of the perfume of the wiki on the leash. Its path even allows outsiders to enter this world of the perfume and take part in the experience of the art.
Okay, on Tuesday we all had the opportunity to sample Jiki, the oldest perfume in continuous existence. In all likelihood, the original bottle of this perfume or the original paper with the recipe have been used or destroyed a long time ago. In addition, thousands and thousands of bottles of this perfume have existed all around the world. When we are proving that perfume can be fine art, which one of these instantiations represents the work of art? You'll recall that earlier in the semester we studied how Wolfheim combated the physical object hypothesis with a type token distinction. The reviewer of Jiki that we read similarly mentioned that the current experience of Jiki differs from what she remembers from the earlier 20th century because of changes in ingredients and regulations. But the fact that it is a masterpiece has not changed. A type is a generic entity and a token in each individual instance of that entity. We want to emphasize that perfume is one of these genres of art that easily fits into Wolfheim's type token distinction. Even if the type is what can be called the work of art, each token is no less an example of fine art. Now that I reviewed the type token distinction, Angelica will further illustrate its usefulness through some specific examples.
We felt that considering perfume as high art related relatively closely to Richard Wolfheim's art and its objects, and his challenge to the physical object hypothesis and its application to our argument. So he brings up this type token distinction that is seen in other forms of art like dance, theater, food, and music. For instance, the play Macbeth is a type and an individual performance on a given night with a specific cast is a token. This is analogous to perfume. The artist, who is the perfumer in this case, creates the original perfume from a specific chemical formula in a very nuanced manner, and it is mass-produced and distributed in very large quantities. But the artwork, also known as the type, is the abstract existence of this chemical formula, and these millions of little bottles containing the perfume are just tokens.
Excellent. Very good. Any media from the other side? Okay. Ready? Go.
So I'd like to begin by clarifying that we are defining perfume as the scent, not the bottle or marketing campaigns that go along with it. Our objective is not simply to disprove fragrance as an art, but to classify it as something altogether separate, something that you guys touched on, a science. So the foundation of that argument is that anyone can reproduce with the right recipe, whereas with other art forms such as cooking, they may involve commonplace ingredients. Those other forms of art have an active creation element, something like sculpting or decorating or cooking that would cause each product to be different. With fragrance, given that you have the proper ingredients and measurements, the action is simply mixing, and so anyone can reproduce the same fragrance. This is supplemented by the fact that perfumers wear lab coats during creation, which just draws parallels with science, and the fact that their ingredients are organic chemicals, as described by the International Fragrance Association. They recently published a list of nearly 4,000 aroma compounds used in commercial fragrances. The creation of the art of fragrance is also involving experimentation, that a lot of fragrances occur by accident, which takes out the active creation of it as art. An example of this is Chanel No. 5, which was created accidentally by perfumer Ernest Beau when he accidentally added a dose of aldehyde that had not been used before, that in a large enough quantity smelled like soap.
Our next point is talking about the changing and transient nature of perfume and how that disqualifies it from being considered an art. So as far as the changing nature, perfume does not stay the same throughout its existence. As soon as you open a bottle, the quality of the perfume and the quality of the scent changes due to exposure to air and light. Just given, like, scientifically, the chemical compounds change and their interactions change to create different scents based on temperature, air quality, and environment factors such as humidity. Additionally, these qualities are different on skin versus on paper. As we saw in the scent of the Nile reading, the executives that were observing the perfumes commented on how different the scents smelled on paper versus skin, and how like certain scents smell better on skin. And people tend to test perfumes on paper because that's how they're marketed. But if they were truly art, they would be marketed solely based on how they smelled on the skin, not on paper.
So, unlike as with other senses, nothing can be smelled without disappearing. So each time you uncork perfume, the bit that evaporates is the bit that you enjoy, and then after you smelled it, you can never get it back in the bottle. So all else being said, perfume is finite, and so you can't enjoy the same bottle forever. If you preserve it in the bottle, then you're not enjoying it and appreciating it as art, and if you do not preserve it, it will disappear with no traces or existence left. So therefore, preservation and appreciation are incompatible, so one can therefore not be able to fully appreciate perfume as high art due to its transience.
Yeah, so one of the main tenets of our argument is that perfume development is almost entirely funded by large corporations, such as Chanel or Hermes, with the intention of creating revenue for the company. If a fragrance doesn't have the potential to make money, then it rarely comes into being. Perfume is not made for perfume's sake, it's made for a profit. And perfumers can view themselves as artists all they want, but at the end of the day, they're not existing solely on their own as creators. They're funded by large corporations, by CEOs, by COOs, so that the company can make money. By fashion houses usually, not even perfume houses. And a key example of how this affects actual perfume creation, like Lindsay said, is the fact that perfume is manufactured to be desirable on testing strips, which is different from the way it smells on skin, so that people in the store want it. It's all about how it's framed in the store so people will buy it. And we saw this in the New York article about the Garden of the Nile. Perfume was really fine art. Its production would not be so fundamentally tied to whether or not people would buy it. Paintings aren't hung in a gallery specifically so people will buy them. They're curated in a way that will create the desired aesthetic effect. So in this way, the fashion industry is oriented to perfume, so it's not a fine art, it's a product. These smells are funded by corporations and framed as the things that we should use to better ourselves, not so we can appreciate them as for their aesthetic content.
Similarly, perfume falls within the category of cosmetics. This is because it is tied to the individual consumer. It has a use tied to the individual consumer, a lot like makeup. It is worn for a specific purpose. People buy perfume because it will make them smell better, not because they appreciate it from an aesthetic distance perspective. This is exemplified by the fact that people often will find one perfume they like and wear it every day. Instead of experimenting with different perfumes, they go with what works well for them. This indicates that perfume only exists to serve a purpose, and once people have found a perfume that sufficiently serves this purpose, they are satisfied. Perfume is therefore not agreeable on its own virtue, and it is more like handiwork because it is agreeable due to the fact that it fulfills a function.
So contrary to what the other side has argued, there's a lack of an artistic figure when it comes to perfume. So some say a perfumer is the artist, but a perfumer's role is not actually comparable to an artist. Oftentimes perfumers are commissioned by outside brands and fashion houses to create a product that aims to be pleasant, that audiences will be receptive to. But the perfumer is not actually inspired on their own. They're told what their inspiration should be, so it's kind of an artificial process. And substantial control of the perfume creation process rests with the fashion house and not with the perfumer. So in terms of the independence and freedom that we see other artists having when they're creating, say, a painting or a musical composition, we don't see that with perfumers. And also, if we look at the final product, it's gone through many different variations. And the final approval for this product lies not with the perfumer's satisfaction or fulfillment, but with someone else who is much more focused on corporate interests. So as a result, the final product is much more about commercial interest than it is about the perfumer's artistic vision.
And finally, perfume is both too accessible and unattainable. So the mass production of fine perfume causes it to lose its authenticity and uniqueness, or its aura, which is what Walter Benjamin thinks is vital to a work of fine art. In addition, its context and history, as well as vocabulary of the craft and product, is not well circulated to the public. And as Danto thought, curators are like museum gatekeepers. Perfume experts are very much alienate the general masses to their craft.
Excellent, okay. So now you have time to regroup. teams are ready to go? Okay, we're back to the pro side. And go.
Alright, the first thing they say is perfume's a scent, that's fine. Then they say the scent is a science and that anyone can reproduce it. So first of all, I think they need to clarify more specifically why an art cannot also be a science, why these categories are mutually exclusive. Second of all, I think that there is some skill to the creation process. I think it's probably a little bit, like, I'm not an expert on perfume, but it's probably a little bit more complicated than just dumping all the ingredients inside of a bottle. So that like makes it similar to other things like food and music. And thirdly, I think other types of art can also be perfectly reproduced with the right technology, like music you can reproduce perfectly. Additionally, like you can just rewrite all the words in a book. The artistic process here isn't the construction of the material, but it's rather the creation of the sort of formula for the material based on the type token distinction that we talked about earlier.
And then I wanted to tackle the issue of transience in perfume. First of all, it's comparable to other forms of art. Plays, you can watch a play once and then never watch it again, it's still art. Or a play can go out of existence, it's still art. A book's meaning that's written in a certain time period can decay over time as the understanding of a certain culture decays. That doesn't mean that the book is not art. Secondly, ephemerality can actually be a concept present in art. I don't see why it has to disqualify something from being art. Tibetan sand paintings are art in and of themselves that depend on ephemerality to express their meaning. Also, the sillage and the reach of a perfume are components of that perfume that are intentionally engineered to do certain things, so the ephemerality is a concept in the perfume. And fourthly, technology could eventually be created that would make perfume able to be smelled everlastingly, which would change that.
Then I want to jump back in to deal with first the paper skin distinction. First of all, I just don't understand why this is a meaningful distinction for saying that something isn't art. I mean, paintings can be looked at in different lighting, music can be listened to with different types of headphones. That's always going to change the experience slightly, but I think they need to show why it's meaningful enough to overcome the like type token barrier that allows us to have slight differences between the instances of each piece of art, whereas like the broader work is still the same. Then they talk about how it's not preservable. You need to like use it up in order to enjoy it. I think this is probably relatively similar to the transience issue. The type token thing solves still, like a musical performance dissipates the same if you want to listen to it, but you can still listen to it again using the fact that the formula still exists. And second of all, if it was the case that you could invent sort of a perfect technology for recording the specific perfume that existed, then you would be able to have the exact same perfume experience and wouldn't have to use it up. So that shows that it's not really an issue of like the qualities of perfume, but rather just the technology that we have in the status quo.
Yeah, one argument was that perfume is purely cosmetic, and if that were true, then it would be made utilitarian-wise, and you just use the cheapest material as possible. That's definitely not true. One of the most popular materials in fancy clothes, at least, is ambergris, which is a sample from whale digestive tract, and 5 pounds of it goes for about $200,000. The smell can be pretty much exactly replicated with synthetic chemicals, but many clone houses still choose to use actual ambergris for quality purposes. A big argument you guys had was that perfume was a business and that was too tied into money to be actual art. I work at an art gallery, and you guys said that art galleries hang art for cosmetic purposes or aesthetic purposes, but not to sell. I can tell you for a fact that's very untrue. Pretty much all paintings now are sold as investment art, be resold later for profits. All paintings that are hung at the MoMA or the fancy museums are correlated to how well they do as investment art. There's an idea of the eccentric, billionaire art collector. That's very rare now. Pretty much all art is sold for making money.
Yeah, and I just want to touch quickly on the logical incoherency in your argument that, one, you said perfume is a mass-produced product, it's formulaic, so anyone can produce it, which you said disqualifies it as art, as well as the fact that you simultaneously said that it is temporary and finite, which disqualifies it as art. But these both can't exist because if anyone can produce perfume, then it is not temporary because anyone can produce it. So these two things are mutually exclusive and you can't argue both of them. Simultaneously, art is mass-produced in today's culture. That's just a facet of our culture, not perfume itself. And the tough vocabulary associated with perfume is used with pretty much all art today. So that also is not just a thing that is exclusive.
Respond.
Okay. So we would like to address the argument that you made that you need skill and talent to create perfume. You say that perfumers dedicate skill to their art and a mastery of the perfume making process led to Atlanta being considered a world-renowned perfumer. But we would like to refute that by saying that having skill doesn't necessarily make you an artist. Because skill may be a necessary condition, but it's not sufficient because you can have knowledge of any formula or scientific process and make a perfume, but that doesn't necessarily qualify you as an artist of perfume.
I wanted to push back on this type token distinction that you guys have drawn attention to because I think that it's, according to Wollheim's argument, he's focused mostly on talking about objects and what happens when a certain object is replicated, but in like a physical sense. But when you consider perfume and we're accepting perfume to be the actual scent of perfume, it's not supposed to change whether it's in a bottle or mass-produced. The actual sort of authentic aura is like a coherent sameness. So there shouldn't really, the type token sort of framework doesn't apply here. And we wanted to also draw attention to the fact that there isn't any sort of change when you have a high kind of fragrance that's worked into a collection of different products. So for example, Yves Saint Laurent has a scent called Opium, and they work that scent into like soaps and shampoos and deodorants, and so they've essentially taken what we would attack as the scent, as what's under debate as art, and we've reworked it into lots of different products, therefore not really treating the scent itself as art.
We also want to push back against the distinction between the idea of having like lower celebrity perfumes being the only thing as kitsch. However, there really isn't that much of a distinction between those celebrity fragrances and something that's a higher fashion fragrance such as Chanel. So the whole perfume industry in general, it operates under the same way in order to mass produce and to bring in profit. The main objective is still their bottom line, and they want to sell their brand. And this can be referenced back to Greenberg's argument regarding kitsch, and he does say that that kitsch really operates in a mechanical fashion and formula. So there definitely is a systematic way that perfume is manufactured on a high scale level, and it covers both the celebrity fragrances and the high fragrances. So.
Thanks to that. Perfumes, while immersive, can add insights or motivate just use on the phone. Was experienced in the classrooms, blind scent test was not moving and was not as do we describe an experience, but simply an instance of habitual active usage. This cannot be regarded as something influential or punctuating because scents are ephemeral and designed to disappear in order for reapplication, to appreciate it once more, but to understand why it is important to you. Additionally, there doesn't seem to be much transparency in the perfume industry with regard to authorship, so this makes it harder for others to appreciate and understand what is intended by a fragrance, and there is a narrative surrounding perfume that is obscured by the marketing industry. For instance, the perfume garden on the Nile uses Egyptian green mangoes. However, just by smelling the perfume, we can't fully appreciate the origins and profile without understanding its background. Context here allows for awareness and removes it simply from being another part of the identity.
We'd also like to address your argument in saying that you can't consider perfume making to be science, and we would say that you can because perfume making is the science of combining certain smells and fragrances, and you're transforming either a certain material or a scent to get another scent that you like. So you may use one material and you use chemical processes and different ingredients to transform it into something that may sound completely different from what it was originally. So we would like to argue that having skill that perfume making qualifies
5 minutes. You have a 5-minute work period for your response.
Or response.
What did you change?
I think I did, but like taking notes.
Yeah, I was just taking myself down.
Yeah, they're gonna
You don't walk in and say, I want that. Yeah, some people put like, for like such a niche community, people buy art, people who actually look at it, like 3% of people walk in the gallery, and most are the ones who are like, I might buy something today, well, 97% of those are pretty. Whereas if you're name, people are coming in your face, like, that's why I think musicians, let's say, and you see a billboard for MoMA that doesn't say, come buy our art. Like, that's not really fair. Like, yeah, and then maybe the 4 millionaires who go out, maybe they want that to buy it. Also, the whole point of the funding argument is that they don't get to buy. It's like people create their own by houses. It's tied, so.
I thought that was
so
trying to
tied
change the token by saying
that
the original argument about type token was inspired to include
Yes.
for the specific.
Ours will go
Well, they did originally say that they were just like the scent and not the bottle or the register, but like the scent has to be maintained and like we're not talking about the recreation of the bottle. And it makes sense. For the art to scent, they was more thinking about the bottles. I feel like you have to have it container for the scent. Like you can't recreate, like what you're recreating is the scent, but it has to be contained in such a big facility.
And then like, for the, argument on but like to like experience art, like use like you go like a gallery that's come out through it and you like either like from a small fee or for free and like every free like you have to like buy a experience. But with food isn't any different. It's like you like have to like pay for food at a restaurant. There's just stuff. It's no different. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's yeah.
I mean, you want to make everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we have straws for it. So, and then see, reject.
You guys have
start with the pro side again, and we'll hear their response to the con side argument. Go.
Okay, so the first thing that was talked about, or one of the first things I talked about, is type token, is saying that for the scent itself to be an art, it has to be replicated over time, and it can't be done because when you smell a scent based on paper or based off your skin, or over time, the formula is going to change just based off the chemical nature of the compound. We'd like to address that in the sense of other pieces of art. If you have a movie, when you watch it in a theater, it's going to be appearing different than if you're watching it in your home. If you watch a movie on your iPhone, it's going to look different than if you're projecting it onto a wall. It doesn't necessarily invalidate as art. Also, music. If you listen to music in an amphitheater, if you listen to Beethoven's play back in whenever Beethoven was alive, or sorry, Beethoven's operas when he was alive, it's going to sound a lot different than when you're hearing it on your headphones. So it doesn't necessarily invalidate it as art. You're saying that since art's reproduced and since perfume's reproduced and it's going to be smelled in a lot of different ways, that means that it's not art because it's mass-produced and you'll find it in a lot of malls and shopping areas. That doesn't necessarily invalidate it as art. While Van Gogh's paintings weren't necessarily supposed to be my iPhone background, they are there and they've got a Snapchat logo on them, and it doesn't necessarily mean that's not art because it's part of the context. General mass producing for profit. So when you're mass producing any piece of art, it's going to be for profit. You have the music industry. It doesn't mean that because Kendrick Lamar sent or got platinum doesn't mean that music's not art. It's just a simple, I don't see how that can be a thing.
Okay. So also you attacked our assertion that perfumer has skill and talent, and that skill and talent doesn't necessarily make them artists. But we say that perfumers could of course still have genius on top of that, like Kant's idea of genius or various ways of expressing through the medium of perfume. Just having skill and talent may not be sufficient, but it's not the only thing we're saying perfumers have. Also saying that perfume is a science because of the trial and error involved in mixing various compounds until a perfumer finds something they like. Trial and error happens in other media, especially music. Like musicians jam for a long time before they make compositions sometimes. Trial and error happens in several media. And to that end, you've shot down a lot of traditionally artistic elements in the medium of perfume, but we're not convinced that all of the things that you shot down are actually necessary conditions. So there may be some sufficient conditions that you said perfume does not have, and that's fine, but there's no necessary condition that you've shot down that perfume does not have.
Alright, so we're going to bolster our argument that perfume cannot be considered art by reframing our argument in terms of Dewey's famous distinction between experience and integrated experience. And perfume represents an instance of an unspectacular experience and is consequently unable to be considered high art. To remind you of the two definitions of experience versus an experience, experience is a continuous state of ununified, unspectacular, banal moments. It's basically like your baseline of daily life, unpunctuated daily life. On the other hand, an integrated experience is a special moment that punctuates this baseline state of life. It is satisfying, unified, memorable, and has the potential to change a person permanently and by inspiring future reflection on that moment. Art, high art, is aligned with this second kind of experience. By definition, perfume is simple experience, as a person who enjoys putting on perfume in the morning does so habitually. It becomes a routine to apply this perfume every morning, and you do not think about it after some time or linger on the scent that you apply, and it does not have the consequential ability to really change your state of mind going forward. It just becomes habit. As far as other people who enjoy the scent, I'm going to go back to our argument that perfume is a transient art, in that the smell dissipates throughout the day. And just to return back to the transient, you mentioned that plays or musical performances are also equally transient states of art, as they aren't constantly happening again and again in front of you and dissipate in a different way. However, these forms of art can both be recorded in some way and revisited, which substantiates their memorability, and this does not hold true for perfume.
I'd also like to go back to Greenberg's idea of pitch and how it directly applies to perfume.
perfumes mass-produced, which is a defining feature of Fitch, and it's done with a purpose, which is to make money. Each bottle of mass-produced perfume is supposed to be reproduced with the same exact scent profile, which means that perfumes can't really be truly unique, and that since many of these, as we're trying to scientists, can make the same perfumes, then it's not art. To the point of the purpose being to make money, a perfume's success is often measured by sales rather than the joy or the aesthetic emotion that you experience, which again sort of bolsters the idea that perfume is not art. So the idea that with the right formula of chemicals to combine, you're a perfume artist is like saying that someone who does a paint by the numbers painting is also an artist. And further on that point, you rarely see the names of perfumers on bottles. And basically, if there's no creator, then there's no creation. So we can't identify perfume as art.
Excellent. Okay. Last 3-minute work period before our 2-minute All right, so ready for a recap from both sides. Starting again with the side.
Okay, first you define perfume as the scent, not the bottle or marketing campaign. As Gabe mentioned, your objective was to disprove fragrance as an art and classify it as a science. You draw comparisons to science by claiming anyone can reproduce it with the proper ingredients, and then mention that perfumers wear lab coats and that chemicals are the main ingredients. You then mentioned that the creation of fragrance involves too much experimentation and often the final product is created by accident. After that, you bring up that perfume is transient and it changes with exposure to light and air and smells different on skin than on paper. You highlight the last point by saying that corporations focus on the way it smells on paper to help sell it in stores, but people sometimes test perfumes on paper, not skin. Then you bring up that perfume is constantly disappearing with use, but if you don't use it, you are not appreciating its artistic qualities. You end your opening by highlighting that perfume is part of the fashion and cosmetics industry, where larger companies commission a perfumer to make the scent and give them their inspiration already, and emphasize that the company or corporation gets the final say in the scent and they do not make any effort to share the context and vocabulary of perfume with the public. In your rebuttal, you first address our point of having a skill to create perfume by saying that having a skill doesn't make you an artist, and so skill is a necessary quality but not a sufficient one. Then you address our type token distinction by saying that the argument is specific to physical objects and perfume is not a physical object. Then you say that there is no distinction between high and low quality perfumes because the main objective of both is to make a profit. You then mention that the perfume industry is not transparent, and so we lack the narrative the narrative of the perfume, which makes it hard to appreciate it. You end the section by suggesting that perfume creation must be science because it involves transforming different materials via chemicals. In your last points, you start off by saying that perfume can't be art, drawing on Dewey's argument of experience versus integrated experience. You define perfume as just experience because it's put on every day and enjoyed throughout the day. You mentioned that because it's transient, other people cannot experience it as an integrated experience either. You then come back to the kitsch argument by saying that all perfume is mass-produced and has the purpose of making money. Then you end by comparing perfumers to paint by numbers artists because they only need a formula, and mention that you never see perfumers' names on bottles.
Okay, and now to the con side.
The pro side position presentation began by stating that a perfumer can be considered an artist in the same way as a sculptor or a composer. Mike alluded to Kant's definition of genius, arguing that Elena used his mastery to triple Hermès' perfume record. Next, the pro side clarified their central argument that not all perfume is art. However, some truly remarkable fragrances can qualify as high art. Furthermore, they addressed the issue of kitsch celebrity fragrances, stating that perfume as high art requires expertise and for the perfumer to consider herself as an artist. The next point characterized perfume as art for its own sake, stressing that its goal is to create an entirely new scent, not mimic biological phenomena. Addressing the condition of expertise, side 1 pointed out the standards of excellence for perfume that further legitimize it as art. Then they brought up the idea of perfume as an experience a la John Dewey. Finally, the pro-side concluded their presentation with a type token distinction, stating that even though the Jicky formula might have undergone some tweaks, the token we sampled in class is no less worthy of the label art than the original bottle.
In rebuttal to our claim that making perfume is a science, you said that art and science are not mutually exclusive. You then said that other forms of art can be reproduced, even by people with little to no skill. To counter transience, you use the examples of a play and novel to point out that there are other forms of art that either do not last forever or whose meaning changes with cultural shifts. You then noted that ephemerality could be incorporated into art, as in the case of Tibetan sand paintings. You noted repeatedly that technology is simply a limiting factor here. To rebut our claim that perfume is functional, you emphasize the exorbitant cost of perfume's ingredients. You claim that all art is exhibited to make money. Last, you argue that we contradicted ourselves in thinking that it is because you think it is mutually exclusive to say that anyone can make perfume, but that its transience makes it not art. Next, to defend your use of the type token distinction, you noted that the channel through which you view or experience art does not invalidate it as art. Next, you push against the notion that mass-produced items can't be art, using the Van Gogh on your iPhone example. Then you claim that anything that is mass-produced results in profit. Next, you distinguish between skill and genius. Perfumers apparently are genius. Other mediums, especially music, involve trial and error. Last, you claim that you only knock down sufficient conditions.
Okay, so there's a lot to discuss here. And I actually wish we had a little bit more time in class. I mean, I wish we had more classes so we could spend a day discussing this. But I think both sides did a really good job drawing on